Hello there. This is your bit of feedback as mentioned in Teams for the objective you've just finished, which is how effective is tourism to narrow the global development gap. And you've looked at the case study of Jamaica and you collected some information on the positives and the negatives of tourism in Jamaica in terms of narrowing that development gap. And this is just a very quick take through for the feedback to the 9-mark question. In terms of that question, it was evaluate the effectiveness of tourism in reducing the development gap. It was a 9-mark question and it really nicely gave you a figure number to use for your structure. Obviously, we see the word evaluate, we know immediately we need to give a little bit of however, a bit of AO3 in there. And we know it's a 9-marker, so we know it's 3 paragraphs and a conclusion. And I'm not going to show you the specific mark scheme, but if you look here, you can see that there are 3 levels, level 1, 2 and 3. And that's whether it is basic, whether it is clear, or whether it is detailed. And I'll talk you through that a little bit as we move forwards. The source you've got gives you lots of information. You've got an image, you've got some views about tourism in Botswana, and you've got some numbers to show that tourism is actually increasing in Botswana quite significantly. So there's lots of data that you could and should be using in your answer. Quick reminder, because we haven't seen it recently, is that this question needs to be an R2D2 question. You need to be using the 1, 2, 3, 2, but actually you also probably need to be double developing. You need to be 1, 2, 2, 3, 2, 2. Remember that. It's always important to use connective like furthermore, building on this and developing the points that you make. It helps you to get into that detailed section of the mark scheme to reach those 7, 8s and 9s. Obviously this example here doesn't double develop and it isn't linked to this question, but it gives you a good idea about what AO1 is. It's your starting point and your piece of knowledge. Your AO2 is explaining that and linking it back to the question. AO3, we know it now as the however AO, don't we? We know that that's the point where you start to assess or evaluate or reach conclusions. And once you've done your AO3, you need a second piece of AO2. You back up your AO3. These questions are all about showing both sides of the issue. So, in terms of the question, paragraph 1 for this one should use the source. I should say before we start talking about it, there is no right or wrong if you use slightly different pieces of information. This is about showing you the structure and showing you what my model answer would look like. I started off with a bit of AO3 and you should have all started it this way. You've been taught well and you know how to do this. To some extent, tourism is effective in narrowing the development gap. You're already showing that it's only to some extent. So in figure 9, I'm using the figure, we've talked about this before, I can see how tourism has attempted to narrow the development gap in Botswana. I can see that in 2012 there were over 50 million arrivals and over $30 million made for the economy. There's my first bit of AO1. I now need to develop this. This is positive as this money can be spent to improve the quality of life for the people, as it can be invested in healthcare, education and infrastructure. We talk about those all the time. AO2, explanation. I then double develop it because I'm then going to say it means that they can then work in better paid jobs, leading to more development. And this is how tourism can stimulate the economy. However, AO3, this will only be the case if tourism is sustainable as is shown in figure 9. If it isn't, then tourist activities such as safari will not be able to happen in the future, meaning that the development gap will not be narrowed. Bit of AO2. Once you've used the source and you've done your first paragraph, you then have to do 2 more using your own knowledge. And here they are. From my own knowledge, and again you should have that written in your answer. From my own knowledge, I know that tourism has been used in Jamaica, identify your case study, to try and narrow the development gap. To some degree it's been successful, as 220,000 Jamaicans work in tourism. It's a vital employer. There's your AO1, there's your fact. It's detailed. If you think about that mark scheme, you're using a specific number. People work in a wide range of jobs, from the construction of hotels and tourist facilities to service work such as cleaning and working in bars. This enables people to work in the formal economy. I'm now double developing and using some good geographical terminology, where they can pay tax to the government, who then can use this money to invest in healthcare, education and infrastructure. Double development. It's good. However, local employees are paid low wages, whereas managers from other countries tend to earn more, meaning that many of the profits from tourism do not stay in the local economy. Bit of AO3. Might have been able to develop that stat point slightly more. Paragraph 3. Another way in which tourism has benefited the economy is it provides 20% of Jamaica's GDP. This money can then be spent in the local economy to support other local businesses. Nice AO1, nice bit of AO2, and I'm now going to double develop it with some great geography. This is called the positive multiplier effect and helps narrow the development gap. Now that's really important. I could explain more what the positive multiplier effect is. And this is the idea that if you spend money in the economy, the people that you pay can then spend that same money into something else that they need, and the money starts to go around the economy and the economy starts to grow. You should have looked at this in your booklet. However, AO3, large TNCs, transnational companies, we know about those, such as Thomas Cook, organise the holidays and make most of the money, so the profits go out of Jamaica and into Hicks, meaning that the positive impact of tourism is not as great as it could be if local people and local businesses owned the holiday resorts. Furthermore, or in double developing, it's very clear, because many of these holiday resorts are all inclusive, many of the tourists do not leave the resort, meaning they don't spend money in the smaller and more local businesses. I then finish with a nice overall. Overall, tourism is an effective way to narrow the development gap, but is not perfect. It's most likely to be most effective when an eco-tourism approach is taken. And again, I could develop that further by saying this is possibly because ecotourism is run by local people, it's small scale, it's sustainable, and all the profits stay in that local community. Now, my answer there is level 3. It's detailed. It's got statistics in. It follows the structure perfectly. It's got great geographical terminology. I use knowledge to support my points, and it double develops. It would be at least 8 out of 9, which is a great way to approach these questions. What I'd like you to do is, using this, I'd like you to go to your answer and I'd like you to improve yours where you can. That doesn't mean just copying mine out. It means looking at the points you made and building on them. How can you develop your points? There are a range of paragraphs you could have written with your own knowledge, particularly for Jamaica, because there's quite a lot of information provided. Okay, that's your first task. Thanks very much. I'll speak to you soon. Bye-bye.